Hi, and welcome to another Better Conversations podcast with the founders. Happy New Year as well. And we are here to discuss the everyday things we see and apply our youthful wisdom to share our thoughts. So, today we're actually going to discuss a little bit about why you haven't seen us for so long. And then also we'll also highlight some of the goals that we have for 2025 as well. So, I'll hand over to Paul.
Yes, welcome back, everyone. I'll be the host of the show today because today I'll be interviewing Tavian himself. He's been gone for a few months. That's why we haven't been uploading or recording, because he has been pursuing his masters. So Tavian, would you like to tell us what your masters was about?
Yeah, so I did a master's in management, specifically entrepreneurship management and innovation. That's actually what I've been doing for the last 2 years and 3 months. But obviously over the last 6 months, I was actually doing my dissertation. So that takes up a huge portion of time. So we couldn't really do much recording. But it was a really interesting dissertation where I was doing very interesting work on education and like sort of how we can solve some of the education problems that we see in the UK. So all in all, a really interesting experience.
Fantastic, and we're glad to have you back. We're glad to be recording. So today's episode, we're actually going to go through what Tavian learned during his time doing his masters, what his takeaways from it, what's he learned about entrepreneurship. So we've written the questions down.
Yep.
So are you ready, Tavian?
Yes.
Okay. So question number 1: what is the biggest takeaway from your masters?
Yeah, so I think I guess I want to caveat with the fact that, a lot of people, well, I've heard a lot of people say that, like something with entrepreneurship or business and stuff, you don't go to like university to learn that type of stuff, right? You just like do it, Like there's a lot of influencers out there that say that type of stuff. Which I actually agree with, to be fair. And that's actually not the reason why I actually went to study the masters in entrepreneurship management anyway. The main reason was obviously to firstly grasp the theoretical concepts around what entrepreneurship is, why it's relevant in today's world, and where it's actually come from. So it was more actually exploring the ideas around entrepreneurship and how it actually influences society today. And that was the interesting part for me. In terms of the biggest takeaway, I think one thing that's always going to stick in my head is an entrepreneur. Well, what makes an entrepreneur and who is an entrepreneur. And an entrepreneur, basically, from all the studying that I've done, summed up in kind of like 2 years, is someone who takes an idea to an opportunity. And to really break that down a little bit further for people, we put different metrics or values on what an idea is and what an opportunity is. So if someone comes to you with an idea, we're generally looking for things like, well, how new is it? How relevant is it? How unique is it? So we're measuring it differently. But when someone comes to you with an opportunity, you're now measuring it like in a very different way. Like it's now being measured as like, well, what can I get out of it? What's the value it's going to add to someone else? So the idea is that an entrepreneur isn't generally someone who succeeds all the time at that journey, but it's someone who actually is willing to take that journey from an idea, which is just like a unique concept or something that's, niche, and actually take it all the way through all of the steps that you need to go through. And obviously in the masters, we learn through all the steps and stuff as well. But take it from like literally a piece of paper to that opportunity where it's actually being able to be presented as real value to society and real value to investors or whoever it is that's going to buy into that idea. Well, that opportunity even. So yeah, that was probably the biggest takeaway for me, because I think a lot of the time in society, we see entrepreneurs as like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, the people that have like succeeded. But there's also many people that have taken the journey of entrepreneurship. And I think wherever you are in life, that journey, trying to take something from an idea to an opportunity, will add a lot of value to you. And even if you don't become like the next Elon Musk, I think that method of thinking can definitely get you places for sure. So that's probably the biggest takeaway.
Wow. Point of interest from what you just said there. You said you were looking into why the entrepreneur is relevant in today's society. Could you expand on that, please?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the time when we think about entrepreneurship as well, we have basically billionaires. Like we perceive them as like people that have succeeded, done like crazy things. And what we don't realize is like those are the epitome of success, basically, for entrepreneurship. But we actually need entrepreneurs in everyday life, people that are willing to take a very small idea and turn that into something that actually adds value to society. That might not turn them into the next Elon Musk, but it adds value to our everyday living. So when we're thinking about like entrepreneurs, they used an analogy in the Masters, which is basically everyone fell in love with Usain Bolt, because obviously like when you line up on a track, he was like straight, he was winning, like that's a successful sprinter. But everyone else that lined up next to him was also a sprinter, basically. And even though they didn't like break the record, they're still defined as sprinters, basically. So it was changing the way that we viewed entrepreneurship in society. Like when you come into studying like entrepreneurship, you think when I come out, I'm going to try and build like the next Microsoft or something. But actually what you come out with is actually my mindset needs to change around entrepreneurship. And I actually just need to be someone who's always looking to add value and impact in whatever I'm doing. And I think that was the biggest takeaway. And I think that's definitely made me more driven and focused to how am I actually adding impact in all of the actions I'm taking.
Wow, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries.
We can share that with me later.
Yeah.
Second question. What are some of the biggest challenges to entrepreneurship you see in the UK?
Yeah, so I put this question in there as well. We like thought about the questions together. And I put this question in there because I think some people might be interested in terms of what do we learn about like opportunities as well. And I've put raising capital because that's just a general challenge to every venture, every business, every entrepreneur. Whether you're trying to raise capital from investors, family, friends, whoever it is, raising capital is going to be the biggest challenge. And especially obviously now, obviously UK is still recovering from COVID, and the ecosystem for sort of research, innovation, all of these things is kind of dwindling a little bit. So that's always going to be sort of like a big problem, I think. I also think I want to mention something that came up as well is sort of the risk adverse culture that we have in the UK
Wow.
as well. So like in the UK, we're very much like go to work, come back, save the money, buy a property, retire with a little bit more than what your parents did, and hopefully you can pass that on. That is pretty much like what we that's the staple UK life, I would say. And that culture is kind of ingrained in us. And we learned a little bit about how people that try to go against that generally get pulled back a little bit. I think what's the saying? Is it like poppy syndrome or red poppy syndrome, something like this?
Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah,
In the Caribbean, we call it crabs in the barrel.
yeah, crabs in the barrel, crabs in the bucket. It's sort of very similar concept, and like the risk adverse culture is, I think, it can be driven from many things, but when you generally have a risk adverse culture, people they don't want to take risks, basically. And one of the things that we learn in the course is that actually entrepreneurship isn't really about taking like uncalculated risk or like taking a jump out of nowhere, basically, but it's actually about managing risk. And if you have a risk averse culture already, you're going to manage those risks in a way that basically tries to cancel them all out, which isn't really the best way, because then you're not going to really move forward. So the entrepreneurship journey is managing risk, but it's managing it in a way that you can continue to progress. If you have a risk averse culture, you manage risk in a way that you try to cancel those all out. So eventually you end up maybe canceling ideas or opportunities that might have actually helped society or could have added a lot of value. So that's the second thing I think that the UK could work on. Also, like the final thing is limited exposure to possibilities. I think I read somewhere recently as well that 40% of the AI startups is actually in America, which is like a massive amount. That's globally, right? I think in the UK it's 7%, and you can imagine that probably majority of that 7% is located in London as well. So when you've got a very centralized like location like London on a very sort of small island, you can see how those opportunities they just don't spread, and you have most of the population actually capped by the fact that they just haven't seen things. Like they just haven't seen, what Canary Wharf looks like, for example. Far less like, what like Y Combinator in Silicon Valley is doing, in America. So where we're
Yes.
talking about a country that is maybe deprived of actually seeing what's possible. And we tend to put that view on like third world countries, right? Like, we say like, that they haven't seen like, the latest technologies and stuff, and that's why they've got slow growth. But I think it's kind of similar for the UK as well, bro. Like the slow growth might actually be a result of the fact that most of our country just haven't seen what's actually possible.
I think that's a foundational issue
Yeah.
within the UK though.
Mm. Mm.
As someone, we lived in Bristol. We both lived in Bristol. We both lived in London.
Yeah.
And we didn't notice how bad it was until we moved out of London
Yeah.
to Bristol.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that issue you pointed out there, that's more than an entrepreneurship issue
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
a new idea issue. That's literally a governmental, foundational,
Yeah.
educational, healthcare issue.
Yeah. That's a big, yeah.
Because there are
Yeah.
some parts up north, my lord, you'd think that's the third world country.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
bad. It's
Yeah.
bad. Like London, as much as I love it, even I can admit that the UK, as much as I love London, I can
Mm.
admit the UK is way too centralized.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
even when they're making plans to build railways and they're building HS1 and HS2,
Yeah. With
what's
these,
it? Oh, it's only an hour from London.
yeah, it's all to move to
Make some
London, isn't
jobs where you are.
it? Yeah.
It's not every
Yeah.
day you should be hopping on a 1 hour train to London from Manchester. Make some jobs in Manchester. Make
Yeah.
some jobs in Birmingham, Newcastle, Liverpool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that view is like a big,
Mm.
big problem.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add to you from your first point of being risk adverse.
Mm.
As you know, I've explored the VC space and the entrepreneurship space and done obviously not as much as you have, but done some research into it too.
Yeah.
I remember seeing, I think it was a report or I can't remember where I saw it, but someone was explaining that how for you to raise, let's say, a certain amount of funding in, let's say, funding amount X, X can
Mm.
be anything, right? Funding amount X, to raise it in San Francisco can take you 3 months.
Yeah.
To raise that funding in New York can take you between 5 and 6 months.
Mm.
And to raise funding X in London can take you 18 months to a year.
Yeah. You see.
And I was like, that's a
Yeah.
big issue.
Yeah.
That is, yeah. And
Yeah.
that's why they're missing out on ideas, because
Yeah.
if the funding is so hard,
Mm.
then 18 months, someone could have gone through their savings and realized, oh, I can't do this anymore. I've got to go
Yeah.
back to the workforce and get
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
job. And
Yeah.
then, you know how the British are, it's be like, oh, Jenny tried to make the next Microsoft. She
Yeah.
failed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ha,
No, did it?
look her. She thought she was the big shot. She thought she
Yeah.
was it.
Now
But
she
let
yeah,
alone
did it.
Jenny failed here in the UK, but now you got Jean in
Yeah.
San
Yeah.
Francisco. The same idea.
Same idea. It's
Bang.
taking off. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
same idea is taken off because
Mm.
Jean, like, the funding wasn't impossible for her.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't taking forever. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the person explained that is literally because of the risk factors in the UK. They delay just so they
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
analyze your risk more and more.
Yeah.
Whereas in America, they still they don't just give you the money. They
Yeah, of
still
course.
do
Yeah,
a
yeah.
risk analysis, but they more look at the people and think,
Mm,
okay, this is what we've done before. This is the idea. This is the foundation. Let's give it a go.
yeah, yeah.
Because they rather make 5 unicorns and lose 20
Mm,
than make 1 unicorn and only lose 5 or 6.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And to them, the 5 unicorns over time add so much value.
So much value to the whole country, to society, to people.
Yeah,
And that's the mindset, isn't it? It's like the risk, and I think that's where, isn't it? They see risk as the risk that we're gonna take here, far like outweighs, sorry, like it's far smaller than the benefits. Let's put it that way. That could come from the initial proposal that they've pulled together. Yeah, in London, the investors are going to be asking for probably 3 pages worth of questions,
yep,
which is because they're trying to mitigate so many risks. And that's why it takes so long.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so next question. Where do you think the opportunities are for entrepreneurship in the UK?
Yeah, so I think that's probably a quick one that I can answer. It's healthcare and education, but I'm pretty sure probably a lot of people aren't surprised if you're kind of clued up on the UK market. Healthcare is obviously mainly public, which means that it's always overloaded and it needs to be updated for efficiency, making things much quicker, making things much easier, making things much accessible. That all creates like a massive space for opportunity for new technologies, new services, new products, the whole lot basically. Um, if you're an entrepreneur from that space, or if you have proposals, like if you're a doctor who's worked in the NHS and you're watching this, really consider, like, just look around and think, like, is there anything that I'm doing that is actually manual, that's taking time, that's too long? You might actually be onto like the next unicorn, really and truly, because I honestly think healthcare could be done much more efficiently, and you need startups to sort of motivate that. So I think healthcare is a big one, just for making the NHS more efficient, but also on the flip side, it's also taking some of the workload away from it. So what are some of the new services or new products that you could provide for just preventing things from happening, like monitoring health and all of these things? So healthcare is a big one for me, I think. Education, another one. I think education is actually because of the problem of the UK being extremely centralized. When I did my research in the education sector, like London schools and universities outperform like the country at every single grade, basically. So like we're talking from nursery reception all the way up to like when you're 18, A levels. It outperforms them in like almost every school. I mean, we're talking about the bad schools as well in London, bro.
Wow.
Like it outperforms like every school. And it's because it's centralized, right? And when you're not walking around London, you've got all these other areas that are deprived of teachers that are representative of like different career choices as well. So like I had teachers that had worked in industry before, or that had done things like, imagine if you're in some areas in North where maybe they hadn't done that. You're just not exposed to things. So education, because it's standardized in the UK, the curriculum's basically standardized. You've got a few different examples, but it's pretty much standardized. But the teaching quality is so varied across the country. There's so much opportunity there again. And that's why tutoring services are so expensive, because parents realize that their child's falling behind. And what happens is, well, the teachers only work a 9 to 5. So then you've got loads of teachers charging like 40, £50 an hour to improve, the teaching of students that are falling behind. That's a whole industry that I think can be transformed. And for the UK specifically, like new services and new technologies again to help balance balance the whole UK education system is, I think, again, a must. But we'll see how edtech does with that concerning risk management in the UK
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
So yeah,
Wow. All right, thanks for that. But yeah, you're right.
yeah,
Centralization is a big issue.
yeah, it's a big issue, but it leads to loads of opportunities, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah. Question number 4. What are some of the obvious signs of someone who is cut out for entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I created a list for this one. I said a desire to manage risk. So if you're someone who doesn't look at risk and say, I need to sort of maybe run away from it, but actually let me see how I can manage it. So by manage it, it means what are the steps that I can take to reduce those risks? Then you're probably someone who's thinking in a similar way to an entrepreneur. So that's probably one. A desire for impact. So what I mean by that is someone who wants to do work that will actually result in a difference. So there's a lot of like hand turning jobs, like write up this document, write up this report, you know, complete this presentation or something that isn't really leading something. And then there's a lot of like hands on jobs as well, where you can actually like see the fruit of your labor. So like you think of someone in a manufacturing plant that's like, I don't know, fixing an oil rig or something. Like they can see that their work's done at the end.
Mm.
Like you need to have like the mindset of that person basically who actually wants to make an impact with their actions every single day. You might not want to be at an oil rig, but it's like I want to see the difference that I'm making.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'd say someone that's like that, and then grit. So grit is basically someone who's really willing to stick with something that's difficult over a long period of time. That's basically how you define grit, basically. So someone who has a high level of that is obviously akin, because once again you're stepping into somewhat of the unknown. You need to manage a lot of risk, and yeah, you need to be highly resilient to anything that's going to come at you. And then finally, someone who prioritizes active learning. So active learning is basically someone who wants to learn by actually testing things and doing things rather than like sort of maybe absorbing information. So an entrepreneur, obviously you could spend like years just looking at the markets and seeing what's the best market, doing all the analysis. An entrepreneur would be more akin to just say, you know what, I'm just going to try that market, see what happens, and take all of the lessons from that and maybe apply that into like the next step of my idea or the next proposal that I'm going to put together. So yeah, I'd say those 4 things.
So I remember grit,
Yeah, so high grit,
active learning, as in
active
learning and
learning.
testing it.
Yeah,
Wait, don't tell me. Seeing your actions, the
yeah,
fruits of your labor. I forgot the first one. Oh, risk
yeah,
management.
yeah, yes. So someone who's
Okay,
willing to manage risk. Yeah.
okay. If I can remember the 4 people, you can remember the 4 too.
Yes, yes.
That was again like really good, and you've got me questioning, asking myself if I have those things, and I hope I do. But it's
I
only
think
one
those
way
are
to
things that you
find
can
out.
develop as well, though, isn't it? Like they're not the good thing about that, you're not like born with those things. You can actually develop those things. Obviously, some people will be more akin to those things based on life experience and so forth. But things like grit, for example, when I read the book, like learning a musical instrument or learning a language, for example, will actually improve your grit. So that's something that you can actually improve. You know, like
I see.
yeah,
I think the last one's a bit hard to do though. Like
mm,
if active learning, if
yeah,
that's
yeah,
something
fair
you're
enough.
not, if that's something you're not naturally prone to, how
Mm,
do you improve it? Because then
yeah,
if you go to improve it, you've the first the action of improving the way you naturally learn is
yeah,
you've now improved it straight away.
yeah,
So if you're not prone to that, how I'm not sure how you fix that one.
yeah. So it's sort of like it's trying to fulfill your curiosity with action. So almost like if you remember back in the days of like chemistry experiments, like in secondary school, stuff like that. Um, so you would have to purposefully try and add more of that type of learning into your life, basically. Um, but yeah, that one is probably the hardest one actually. To be fair, I didn't feel that one, but yeah, that one is probably the hardest one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, question number 5. How do you plan to use the skills you have developed in your masters going forward in work?
Yeah, so I think there's a few areas. The first one is to try and inspire others and be a better leader. I think all of this knowledge that I have in my head can actually help people. Hopefully, it's helping you and adding value to you as well, the listeners. Um, so yeah, I think it's firstly just like helping others and inspiring others to take a pursuit of entrepreneurship. It doesn't mean you're building the next Microsoft, but maybe even at work, right? You have an idea. Um, like actually try and take the leap, basically, to actually try and kick it off. Um, Also trying to use the skills that I have now to actually spot real opportunities. Um, so as I told you, I think healthcare and education are two big ones in the UK. So it's about trying to say, well, what can I do with the knowledge I have now to actually try and spot those real opportunities and try and, in a very risk averse country, try and do something basically. So for me, those are probably the two areas I would say um, that I'm going to try and utilize that knowledge now.
So to utilize it in your current work, as in see
Yeah.
opportunities in your current workplace where you can speak to your management and be like, oh, maybe we can try this or try that, try to
Mm,
do this better. And
yeah.
then secondly, potentially work on a startup to attack
Yeah.
healthcare or edtech.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I think that's a good way to keep what you've learned, like keep it active,
Mm,
so that you don't like forget it and you actually practice it so you become better at it on a day by day basis, if that makes sense.
yeah. Yeah.
Alright. Question number 6. Who would you recommend the masters to?
Yeah. So I thought this one would be good as well, just in case anyone's listening to me and saying, I would like that knowledge in my toolkit. I think it's anyone that actually just wants to have an holistic view of entrepreneurship. So right now, most of you that are listening, including myself when I didn't do the masters, have a very singular view of what entrepreneurship is, which is like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, like those guys, like build a company, billionaires, all that sort of stuff. Whereas like if you want to open that view up and actually really understand what it takes to do that stuff from start to finish, so like the process of it, but also like just open your mindset to a completely new realm of like starting up new things, developing new proposals, and like it might not be the next Microsoft, but it might be just like the next big project that your company does to add impact to, I don't know, your customers or whatever. So if you really want to have like a broad spectrum from sort of how does Elon Musk do what he do, how does Elon Musk do what he does, but also how do sort of the the social entrepreneur, like someone who's literally just started a bakery, something like that. How do they do what they do? They're never going to become like the next Elon Musk, but how does that add value to society as well? If you want to know the full spectrum of what entrepreneurship entails, I would say, yeah, it's for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're right. People don't think about the how the Rasta man who's opened up his
Mm,
jerk shop in an area
yeah.
has added value
Yeah.
to society. They just think, oh, there's now food. But
Yeah.
through now his introduction of food, people in that area have access to different culture,
Mm,
different flavors, different spices.
yeah.
And then that, in a way, expands their openness to experience.
Mm,
And so now they've tried some food. Maybe they go on holiday to Jamaica.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
Maybe they listen to some reggae music.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
then maybe now they've done that when they go to somewhere else. Oh, they've tried some Jamaican food, but they've never tried some Egyptian food.
Mm,
I have to think
yeah.
of a
Yeah.
different part of the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. Like a different part. Yeah.
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 And it's like, oh, you know, we I don't usually try stuff, but I tried the Jamaican, it was nice. Let me try this
Mm,
Egyptian food. Complete different. I'm
yeah.
now willing to try. And that's how people are now experiencing different parts of the world.
Yeah.
So it doesn't just bring the financial benefits for one
Mm.
individual, it can bring a whole bag of new ideas and experiences
Yeah. Yeah.
for the wider community.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty cool way to look at it. That even sometimes I forget that also. That yeah, the social, like,
Mm.
everyday entrepreneur is just as important, because that's why businesses are important in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then even through that, the jobs they provide.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and who
So
have they
yeah,
partnered with as well? You know, who's part of their supply chain? So where's the Jamaican getting his chicken from? It might be a local farmer who's now got, you know, a new
and
partner,
yep,
a new connection. You know, so yeah, yeah. Because we have to remember, I think that's what it really opened me up to as well. Like we have to remember that most of the companies that are going to exist are going to be started by, you know, everyday individuals that didn't go to like Harvard or MIT or like have the brains of Elon Musk. They're going to be started by everyday individuals just hoping to solve a problem or fill a gap in their very small society, in their circle basically. But that multiplied many times is what leads to society at large. It's not like Tesla, you know.
hmm
It is like, you know, the multiple people that have opened up a restaurant, or, you know, uh, trying to think of another local business like a bar or something. You know?
yeah,
So yeah,
or like even like like a leisure center.
yeah, exactly.
Think of all the benefit. Yeah, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, those things are very, like, yeah, everything adds value, so nothing can
mm,
be like repressed and say, oh, you're not needed. Wow.
yeah,
So I do have a slight curveball, one final question for you
mm,
that we haven't prepared.
yeah. That's
I can
fine. That's
see.
fine. That's
Okay,
good.
okay, okay, okay. It's not that bad. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
you've done your bachelor's and you've done your master's. Which one was harder in terms of the change from your prior experience? So from sixth form to bachelor's, or from bachelor's to master's? And what are the main differences between them?
Okay, yeah,
Why should someone do a master's? What's the extra value that you've gotten because of it?
yeah. That's a really good question. So I guess for me, my bachelor's was in engineering, aerospace engineering specifically. So I will always say that was much harder than this one, for sure.
Okay.
Like the content was just crazy. I don't think many, many degrees get close to that. Like the maths I was doing was insane. So,
I
so
remember. I
yeah,
remember.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So like
I remember the whiteboards in the
yeah, the
library
white was in the
with
yeah,
equations. Yeah.
yeah. That was crazy. So engineering was definitely a much harder course. However, obviously because I did a master's in something completely different, I think the value that the master's adds is, I think it the way my master's was taught anyway. I don't know for every master's, but I think it broadens your view a little bit. Like there was that thing that says like in your own like domain basically. So if I was to do like a master's in engineering, let's say, like you are with your bachelor's you have like foundational knowledge, and then like with a master's you can say that you have pretty much complete knowledge, and then with a PhD it's like you've actually added to the knowledge of that field. You've added something to it. Whereas with this masters, I would say it's definitely done that. Basically, it's like it's broadened me up, I guess, a little bit. So now I have a lot more of a broader view. And in terms of how that's added value to me, I think it's given me a little bit more of like, it's allowed me to think a lot more about the problems that come in life, but also in work. When you're trying to maybe start a new company, I guess, because that's what I mastered in. But it could be many things. It's like it's giving me a lot more of a broader view um, to the complexities, I guess, that exist in society. So my bachelor's basically gave me, I guess, a foundation of knowledge, which which will equip you to do loads of things. I'd say a bachelor's definitely isn't limited to just like what you studied. Um,
Mm.
so I'd say a bachelor's, if you have done a bachelor's degree, definitely has equipped you with like foundational knowledge that you can definitely apply to many different things. If you're looking for a broader type of understanding, which is basically humbling yourself more to realize how much more you actually don't know, then I'd say the master's definitely does that. Like, and then a PhD, I would say, takes that step further. which is realizing that you can only really add one journal paper to a sea of journal papers, which is constantly being updated every single month with new knowledge that's being added to that field. So I feel like it's more of a humbling experience. You realize that you actually don't know as much as you thought you did, and the world is a lot more complex than what you initially thought. You know what that reminds me of? You remember like in physics, like or maths or anything, like when you did it at GCSE, then
Yeah.
you go to A level and then your teacher says, "Oh yeah, like that was a very simplistic view of the world. Like now we're gonna add like more stuff, or like what they told you there was actually technically false. Like this is actually what's true." Um,
Yeah.
that's what the master did. It's like
Wow.
it opened me up to realizing like actually hold on, yeah, I don't actually know as much as I thought I did.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
That's wow.
yeah,
To still be feeling that in your 20s is is a bit funny still.
yeah, yeah.
All right, fair enough. Well, thank you. That's all the questions we have around the entrepreneurship.
Mm,
Um, so to round off, we are going to be sharing our 2025 goals.
yeah,
Um, since you've been actually doing most of this speaking, I'll give you a bit of a break
yeah, yeah.
and I'll share my 2025 goals with the viewers. So my goals for 2025 are I want to make a concerted effort to learn Spanish and get to a good level. For the last couple of years, I've been kind of consistent with a few online tutorial classes,
Mm,
like watching videos and being a bit consistent on Duolingo. So my vocabulary, I think, has gotten to an okay level now. I can understand stuff in the kitchen, stuff in the office,
mm,
holiday stuff, blah blah blah. So I think now is the time to make the effort to learn to put sentences together. So I'm gonna get trying to get an actual tutor or attending like real classes where I can speak to people and practice my speaking, how to interpret and listen, and then how to respond appropriately. So that's number one. And then secondly, for myself, I want to learn to do a one-handed push-up.
yeah,
Um, it's a bit of a mythical thing in fitness. I think it's made famous by Bruce Lee, or at least that's where
yeah.
I
I think
think
it is. Yeah.
I learned about it. So I'm gonna really try and do that. So I'm gonna do push-ups quite consistently
Mm,
and start doing the skills progression to eventually do not. I just don't want to do one. I want to be able to do one-handed push-ups so that it can be like my party trick.
yeah, yeah,
What's
yeah,
something you
yeah.
could do? I could do a one-handed push-up and then just boom,
Yeah, yeah,
boom. I think that would be pretty cool. So
yeah.
those
No,
are my two goals for this year.
yeah. Yeah, and for me, obviously I've had 2 years and 3 months of working and also doing like a part-time masters. So I think the first one is actually uh trying to improve my fitness actually. So actually focusing on that a little bit more this year. So yeah, trying to work out a bit more and actually trying to focus a little bit more on adding that element to my life now since I've basically been sat down for like 2 years and 3 months, like bagging out this masters basically. So yeah. Try and improve that area in my life for sure. And then also there is the element, as I told you, around sort of trying to apply my knowledge to make an impact. So I think this year I definitely want to be focusing on how I can do that. That might be trying to start a company. That might be actually just getting involved in different industries and seeing how I can add value to maybe non-profits or social impact startups. So trying to look at how I can use my knowledge to really try and drive impact in the UK because I think it needs it. So yeah,
Nice, nice. I
nice.
think it's interesting that we're both looking for ways to not just improve, that's what your New Year's resolution's for,
Mm,
but also to find a way to keep learning or using what we have learned to
yeah,
further progress. I know, like my obviously on a much smaller scale, my like on a much smaller scale, me learning Spanish, um, obviously the impact wouldn't be as high, but I'm still using something I've been doing for the last couple of years, putting it into practice and trying to progress it. And then with that, I'm trying to make sure that my brain still keeps learning,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it still
Yeah.
stays young and fresh. And
Mm.
then on a much more like in-depth level, taking what you've learned from your masters, applying it, and seeing how you can help others with it, how you can actually use it in your professional life, see where it takes you. And then with that, give your brain new challenges too.
Yeah, new challenges. Yeah, basically new challenges. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I'm basically looking for. New challenges. Yeah,
yeah, that's really
yeah.
good. So finally, wait, do you want to say this part?
No, you feel free. Feel free, man.
Wait, I'm not sure what to say on this.
No.
Um,
Okay. Do you want me to say it? I can start.
yeah,
Basically, we are gonna have to reduce, I guess the amount of uploads we do per month because of those new goals. Some of those goals we haven't actually shared, I guess, openly here as well. As just, we're people, so we have to keep some things private. But yeah, some of those goals are gonna take a bit more time. For both myself and Paul. So what we're hoping to do is basically reduce the amount of uploads, but you'll still hopefully get one a month. We're aiming for that. And yeah, we'll see you hopefully once a month every year. Sorry, throughout the new year. Yeah.
yeah. We do enjoy doing this, discussing different things. It's also good for us. It helps us to sharpen our minds too.
Mm.
Like bouncing off each other and like hearing what we've like learned recently in life, and then thinking it through. So that's why we want to keep it going. Even if there aren't like a lot of viewers, we enjoy it. But yeah, the other there are a few things we're pursuing this year that means that we can't give full consistent dedication to this. Hopefully that might change in the future. If in 2 years' time somehow we're both millionaires, well, we've got nothing else to do.
Yeah, we've got nothing else to do. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see how it goes. So we're not gonna put a complete stop to it because we think there's still value here.
Mm.
But yeah, so thank you. We hope you all have a great 2025, and we wish you the best of luck on your endeavors on your endeavors too.
Yep. With that, yeah, we'll see you in the next one.